Ladies and gents, welcome to Reaction. This is, has Trump's new Ukraine peace plan already failed? Or you mean the plan where Trump just say, why are you not wearing a suit? Have you said thank you? Where China roasts you thinking like, have you said thank you, which we give you money with, which I don't know how that works. Yeah, I don't know. Was there a plan though? But if there was a plan, I think it's a long-term thing, so it can't fail already. I don't know. It's like I'm always in two sides of things. Either it was too stupid, which is a possibility, but he was smart enough that it's a pretty long-term plan, which is going to take time. And the point is that plan's result might be the result that not everybody wants, including lots of Americans, left-wing people. So to them, it would fail anyway. But would it fail for the Republicans, like what their goal is, right? It's really complex. This is my channel, TLDR News EU, Europe version. So let's watch this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. If you're into any other reaction to any other channel, comment down which video and which channel you're talking about. Because people usually just generally says video, like I search YouTube, like I can't find the video. Like say the title of the video. Right now, TLDR News is, I guess it's the thing that regularly post is, I don't know. People say that this is biased, but what isn't biased? How biased is it? Like that's the point. But comment down like if there's something is like people give me points on things and always read it, right? I don't like to take any take and just like take it at value. So definitely comment down. And yeah, that's what it.
Ground news. Despite promising to end the war in 24 hours, we're now nearly 100 days into his second term, and US President Donald Trump has proved unable to broker a ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine.
He also said during the Biden time, if he was president, there would be no war, by the way. He did say that.
But now it seems that Trump might be giving up on the process entirely, and last week announced that the US will take a pass on brokering further Russia-Ukraine talks if Moscow or Kyiv, quote, make it very...
Why Moscow? Because Putin just said that it's war if USA takes Greenland. If you've seen geography, globe, I'm not talking about the 2D map, that's misleading. If you've seen the globe, you realize where Greenland is. That's threat to Arctic, which Russia kind of dominates. Yeah, that's Russia's region. Taking Greenland is like just one of those things, right? Russia has this Poseidon submarine and like those like, what is it, like 20 megaton bomb or whatever the fuck they have, right? Super weapon. Usually it's implied that if they use that against USA, they would do that near Greenland or that pass near Greenland. Pass between Greenland and Europe. That pass is important, right? It's like a gateway. If US has a Greenland, that pass is no longer for Russia, right? So there is this strategic element to it. So yeah, Putin's like, yeah, you're not doing this. And Trump's probably like, okay, it's not just, Ukraine now. I would also worry about Russia. Like, I thought Putin and I were like close. Yeah, but not close enough where he'll be okay with you taking Greenland. I mean, come on.
Very difficult to reach a peace deal. So in this video, we're going to take a look at Trump's ceasefire proposal, why it hasn't been able to stick, and why Trump, who once said know when to walk away from the table, may be about to follow his own advice.
He could just take the element of why do I give a fuck in the end? Like if nobody want to reason with, like I don't care, I'll just stop giving aid to everyone, like figure shit out. Europe can figure shit out. He could take that stance. He probably has already taken this stance.
Could you rank every single politician in the world? Hear our thoughts and argue with us on our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. So let's get straight into it. Trump unilaterally decided to begin direct high-level talks with Russia in February, cutting both Ukraine and his NATO partners out of negotiations. The president's essential idea to end the war was to first implement a 30-day general ceasefire, which in turn would pave the way for broader peace negotiations. This was first proposed in March, which Zelensky quickly accepted in exchange for the resumption of US military aid and intelligence sharing, while Putin responded by laying out a series of conditions, demanding, among other things, that Ukraine not use those 30 days to continue forcing.
That just makes sense. The last one, not for Russia. I don't care. Like I'm not talking about like strategically that makes sense. If you order ceasefire just so people can regroup, that's not really ceasefire, is it? Withdrawal from annexed territories. Interesting. Abandonment of NATO membership aspirations. Sure. Demilitarization and halting military aid. Yeah. Recognition of Russian sovereignty over annexed region. Lifting of Western sanctions. Yeah, come on. Like those three things is like, Ukraine demilitarization basically means Russia won. That's what that means. If Ukraine doesn't have military, yeah, it's basically like Russia's just there. It can anytime just walk over and take over Ukraine. Like that's okay. Recognizing Russian sovereignty, basically the places like Donbass and this is now Russia's. Like, yeah, they were always going to do that. Lifting of Western sanctions, like, I don't know. That, again, like, to me, that feels like, even if US does it, I don't think Europe would do it. Because Europe is where the war zone is. Europe can't take that chance. Poland can't take that chance. So EU would not do that. Because it's like incentivizing. Russia did the war, so what's the ramification? Nothing. Western sanctions were lifted. So this is not happening. These are the things not happening.
Forced mobilization, get weapons supplies, and prepare its mobilized units. This apparently led to a scaled-down US proposal for a 30-day moratorium, limited only to attacks on energy infrastructure and Black Sea shipping. While Putin and Zelensky tentatively agreed to the former, both sides immediately accused the other of violations. And more importantly, the deal itself barely affected what was happening on the front lines, where Russia is slowly making advances, having nearly encircled Ukraine's stronghold in Kursk at the beginning.
Trump's like, you're gonna do 30 days ceasefire, Putin, sure. Just move on along. Pretend you didn't hear anything. Let's do what Germany did in World War I, when Britain said, like, don't go to Belgium. Yeah, sure. What, you send me a letter? I didn't get it.
Beginning of March. Russia has already decimated Ukraine's energy infrastructure, and the frequency of such strikes was always going to decline once winter had passed, because that's precisely the time of year that would cause Ukraine's civilians and soldiers the most pain. Meanwhile, the Black Sea deal was no more than an amuse-bouche, as Ukraine had already driven Russia's navy out of it. What's more, the deal quickly seemed to have fallen through, with Putin refusing to agree to its implementation without sanctions.
I didn't know Ukraine did that. How did Ukraine did that? That's insane.
Relief from the West. Putin also caused controversy when he added another prerequisite, that elections in Ukraine should be held before a peace deal is signed, arguing that Zelensky, quote, lacks the legitimacy to sign a peace deal. In response, and in one of the first outbursts...
That's kind of like, what are you talking about? He was still elected. The fuck you on about? I guess he's implying that before peace deal, if election is held, just with certain influence, pro-Russian leader could be implemented somehow, some way. KGB or FSB, whatever that is, right? With help of that. So when the peace deal actually happens, deal favor Russia. Is that what's element here? Or am I watching too many James Bond movies? I don't know.
Of annoyance towards Putin, Trump said in an interview with NBC News that he was very angry and pissed off that Putin had questioned Zelensky's legitimacy as president. Trump also threatened secondary tariffs on Russian oil if he was unable to make a deal with Putin. And
I think he's pissed off that Putin is not following his footstep and actually altering a lot. Trump's like, you're going to do this to me? I'm the world's best leader.
And if he came to believe that Putin was purposefully avoiding a ceasefire. Many had hoped that this would be the case, and the US administration did renew...
This is what Zelensky was saying at the meeting, where it's like, why are you not wearing a suit? You have this demeanor. Trump, I think, just assumed that Putin and he's going to get along fine and there's going to be a peace deal. And after all this shit happened, so yeah.
Existing sanctions. But Trump avoided any further pressure on Putin. In fact, despite Trump's growing impatience with Russia, Trump and his administration has so far only really applied pressure on Ukraine, and Trump has, on multiple occasions, blamed Ukraine for apparently initiating the war. We saw this earlier in the year during the heated Oval Office meeting between Trump and Zelensky.
Gandhi said the similar things to Jews, I think, in World War II. So there you go. Yeah.
Which was followed by Trump briefly cutting all US military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. However, reports suggest that not everyone in Trump's inner circle is necessarily on the same page here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy for Russia and Ukraine Keith Kellogg have allegedly pushed for a more hardline approach towards Russia. But Trump's Special Envoy, Steve...
In their meeting, he was there, right? Like in the sofa like this, like he was going like this, like, God damn. That was hilarious shit. Like, okay, we can see you, cameras on. I mean, come on.
Witkoff has resisted this effort and has been accused by Zelensky of spreading Russian narratives. In an interview with Tucker Carlson in late March, for instance, Witkoff opened the door to giving up all 4 Ukrainian oblasts when he claimed that all 4 were Russian-speaking and had referenda suggesting that they wanted to be under Russian rule.
This is like saying Pakistan should be part of India because, most people are kind of speaking like Urdu/Hindi, so why the fuck not? I shouldn't talk about that because with the recent terrorist attack in Kashmir, let's just say there is extremely high chance India and Pakistan might go at war, especially what's going around the globe. So yeah, there is that, right? You think things can get worse, yeah? You thought that, right? You have no idea what happens when 2 nuclear power goes to war. Yeah, so that's something.
This is despite the fact that Witkoff couldn't actually even remember what Zaporizhia and Kherson were called. And obviously the referenda that Russia held in these territories, in the middle of a war, only took place in Russian-occupied areas. So it's incredibly unlikely that they were actually fair. Meanwhile, Trump has continued to bash Zelensky and attempted to pressure the Ukrainian president into signing a deal that would force Ukraine to hand over to a US investment fund half of the revenue from its natural resources, ports, pipelines, and other infrastructure until it repays a cost estimate for America's military aid.
This is equivalent to, when there's some kind of fight, right? When you're a kid, where there's some kind of fight and one side has too many people with them, has some power with them, like, okay, this guy is like really big, strong, has 5-6 people with him, and there's another guy who's little but only has 1 or 2 guys with them, which none of them are strong, and you have to broker the fight. You always to the weak kid, like, say sorry. Why? Because other guy's gonna fuck you up. This is the equivalent of that. That's what Trump's doing. Zelensky, say sorry. Like, okay, otherwise Russia's gonna war on you. Like, okay, does this strategy work here, like at the global scale? I don't know.
While the two sides did sign a memorandum of intent on a mineral deal framework last week, there were no details about any security guarantees from Washington, which was one of Zelensky's original conditions for the minerals deal. Then, just last Friday, the US president told reporters in the Oval Office that he was not expecting a truce to happen in a specific number of days, but he wanted it done quickly. His comments came hours after Rubio warned that the US would abandon talks unless there were clear signs of progress within days. Well, Vice President J.D. Vance...
That is a big threat though, right? Like you could say anything about Trump or Trump organization, but this kind of ultimatum is kind of big because US is in unique position. And when I say unique position, I mean powerful position. Has been for decades. And if you want to it's either now or never, kind of like ultimatum, US can do that. But it takes certain type of balls, right? Because it can fail really badly. But Trump is doing that because he knows if US steps out of this, Ukraine is kind of fucked. EU is kind of fucked too. I know EU is like, oh, we're going to be fine. How? Like, you kind of rely on US a lot, right? There might be like sanctions could get worse for Russia as well. So everybody's kind of screwed.
Vance told Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni on Friday that he felt optimistic that a ceasefire deal would be secured soon. Both Rubio and Witkoff are now saying that the two sides have barely moved from their opening positions. So why have these negotiations fallen short? Well, the way we see it, the main reason is that Trump has been unable to squeeze any concessions.
Too many shit has happened. It's been like, 2-3 years? Too many shit has happened. People need shit now. Russia can't back down. If Russia backs down, Russia doesn't get anything. Putin is done. There will be revolution in Russia. Like, what was this for? If Ukraine gives everything up, what was the point of fighting back? Now, it's like, shit has happened. Like, I don't know how. I've said this many times, even in the past, even a year ago. Like, how does peace talk work? Who's going to give up what?
Out of Putin. Forcing Ukraine to the negotiating table was always going to be relatively easy. After all, the US has a whole lot of leverage over Ukraine as its most important military ally. But getting Russia to agree to the concessions was always going to be the difficult part. And so far, Trump's strategy, which has mostly consisted of proverbial carrots, including personal calls with Putin, talking up the economic benefits of US-Russia normalization, and parroting Kremlin talking points...
Orange, red? Imported carrots? What type of carrots?
...has fallen short. Trump has already ruled out both Ukraine's accession to NATO and a post-ceasefire American security guarantee. But Putin has still refused to shift on his maximalist war aims. Similarly, after every ceasefire negotiation, Putin has come out with a long list of conditions before any ceasefire is actually implemented. And it's beginning to look like Putin just doesn't want the war to end anytime soon. Reports suggest that Trump is now going to offer yet more carrots to Putin in a final effort to secure a ceasefire, with
Only thing that works is if some kind of peace agreement happens where Ukraine gives up those two oblasts, right? Donbass and other 2-1, which even that's going to be the issue for the Ukraine. But demilitarization, no part of NATO, all this is too much. I don't think Ukraine would ever agree to that, because otherwise what was all this point of, right? So military, fine. Part of NATO even, fine. But give us these two oblasts, could probably work, I don't know. And knowing those two oblasts was already some kind of a proxy thing for years since Crimea war type, since Crimea annexation time, right? Those two always had that element, right? So maybe Ukraine be fine with that, I don't know.
Bloomberg reporting last Friday that his administration was preparing a final offer involving US recognition of Russian-occupied Crimea, as well as a complete freeze of the current front lines. And this might...
And the problem with giving up NATO is like Zelensky said, Putin says one thing and the ceasefire suddenly ends because he wanted to. So how do you trust what Putin says? At least how does Zelensky trust what Putin says? How does Ukraine trust what Moscow says? There has to be a central power that manages things. So it has to be NATO. You get these two oblasts, fine, but other part of Ukraine joins NATO. So NATO can make sure that Russia suddenly doesn't decide to start the war again or try to occupy more places.
Might work. As we're writing this, there are reports that Putin is considering accepting a freeze along the current front lines. Nonetheless, there are two big caveats worth mentioning here. First, Putin signaled that he would accept previous ceasefires, only to produce a long list of additional demands which scuppered negotiations. And second, with no proverbial sticks hanging over his head, what's to stop Putin restarting the war at his convenience sometime in the future? Ultimately, there's a lot to unpack here, with this story reported on by more than 240 sources. Interestingly...
Yeah, well, go to ground.news/TLDR and support this channel. Go to the original video page link. The only thing works here is, like I said, giving up two oblasts to Russia, and Ukraine immediately becomes a member of NATO. Immediately, and NATO forces are in Ukraine and Ukrainian border to make sure Russia doesn't come back again. That is the only thing that would broker peace. Russia still got two oblasts, so Putin can still sell to his people like this was all worth it type of way. Ukraine still exists without those two oblasts, but now with the NATO protection, right? And maybe US can lift some sanctions, not all of them. Because if they lift all of them, it's the incentive as like, okay, any country can go to war, it's going to be fine. There has to be elements like this. Because demilitarization, not part of NATO, right? This shit never works. It's like Russia will just come back and take over the country once again when they are like in better position. Right? I've said this many times, like, why would Russia do war at the time they did? They were not prepared. They didn't have proper equipments. The tanks were not in good conditions. They didn't have the T-14 tanks in enough numbers. They didn't have better planes. Like, they could have prepared for it. So if they waited a few years and like actually ramp up the resources without the sanctions, garner money, and then they did it, maybe the war would look completely different today. So I don't know why they did the war at the time they did. I don't know what the element was. Maybe Putin knew that Biden coming was just like last straw and have to go to war or something. I don't know what the rationalization was there. But yeah. Well, that was Strom's new Ukraine peace plan already failed. I mean, it's show and tell, it's poker, right? What they say could have certain type of meaning, like it's just pressure all around. That's how all business talks work, so who knows. This is my channel, TLDR News EU. If you like my next one, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.